What's up, guys? CJ here, and welcome back to another all-new episode of the Hybrid TV Podcast, where we break down all the big news going down on the small screen. I'm joined, as always, by Will.
Hey, what's going on?
And our special guest this week, Nick.
Hey, everybody.
Yes, the Watchmen TV series, or actually the TV pilot. I think it's one of those things that it's important to stress here, because this letter kind of made me re-examine how we've been talking about it. It's not a done deal. It's pilot order. I think, given what HBO wants, I'm almost convinced that it's going to get a series order. But as of now, it's still a pilot, so we're not really quite sure what exactly is going to come out of that. But it's still, maybe pump the brakes a little bit on this. But the big news this week is we still don't have a lot of concrete information about the TV series, but we got literally probably our most condensed. I don't want to say complete, but condensed official information from the showrunner, the writer, one of the writers behind the show, Damon Lindelof, who is executive producing and really kind of getting this ball rolling. He has been teasing things on his Instagram for a while. That was the origin of hey, maybe it's going to be set in the past because of a Hollis Mason statue. Maybe it's going to be set in Oklahoma because he posed next to a map and Oklahoma had an X on it. Maybe he's gonna, he's been posting all these teasers, over the years. And today he put out a really, really interesting post. The post itself is simply captioned Day 140, but it is a 5-page, it's 5 images, and it's a 5-page letter Lindelof has written to the fans talking about this Watchmen series, and it's not necessarily, it doesn't give you as much information as you would expect from 5 pages. Just to condense it as much as I can, because I don't want to read the entire thing. He just is we don't. He's speaking to the audience about the project, and he's addressing the two camps of fans: the ones that are excited for a new series and the ones that are not excited for the new series. And I would say it's more skewed towards the latter than the former. He addresses a lot of his personal connection with the Watchmen property and how it's so closely tied to his relationship with his father and stuff like that. And the whole thing is actually really interestingly, for like half of the letter, presented Dr. Manhattan style, like with him having these reliving the experience, jumping back and forth between experiences with Watchmen from his childhood, his young adulthood, and flashing forward to him being an adult and a working writer in Hollywood.
Dude, he's gonna play Dr. Manhattan. He's bold.
He could do it.
He could.
So he jumps. So he does that for the first 2 pages, and then he jumps into speaking directly to the audience. It's very interesting. And the 2 takeaways I have out of this is, one, I will say that while you might think a 5-page letter on Instagram would come across as like a cloying attempt to be seen as relevant and a Steve Buscemi, hello fellow kids, hello fellow Watchmen fans. Personally, this actually it rang true for me. I feel like he actually does care very deeply. So maybe I've just been suckered into this. The other thing is, he turned down multiple offers before to do Watchmen-related stuff, as early as the year after Watchmen came out, to do a Watchmen TV series. Apparently in 2009, there was a big push for that, and he said no. He talks about how he knows that, Alan Moore doesn't want a TV series to be made, and he respects that. He doesn't want anyone to adapt his own graphic novel, and to that he says, we're not going to be adapting the graphic novel. He compares it, he says that Watchmen is sacred ground, and he compares how the new show is going to treat the existing source material. He compares it to the New Testament in relation to the Old Testament. The New Testament didn't do away with the Old Testament; it builds kind of off of it and spins out of it. So, I guess I'm trying to jump around here. So he says it's going to be remixed, and that's the big line that everyone is taking away from this. This is Watchmen, quote unquote, remixed. And he says what they're going to do is they're going to sample the original. Like I said, New Testament related to the Old Testament. It still all happened, according to the New Testament. This is just a new story. And he says that the other big thing that people are taking away from this is, he says very specifically here, Watchmen was specific to the time that it was written in. It was a commentary on the 80s, and he specifically says it's commentary on Reagan and Thatcher and Gorbachev. Ours, the new Watchmen series, is going to resonate with the frequency of Trump and May and Putin. And a lot of people are like, hey, is this going to be too political or addressing Trump? And I would say no. I think it's just going to be rooted in the politics of the time. It's not going to be a specific
Kim Jong-un, dude.
Any one person. Kim Jong-un, Trump and May and Kim Jong-un.
Yeah. How do you replace with Trump? It might get a little bit less of a fiery reaction.
Yeah, I think it's just the knee-jerk reaction of any time you mention Trump.
Just to hear his name.
Trump.
Yeah. So that's really, he doesn't give us much actual detail on the series itself, just to say that it's not going to, he confirms it's not going to be a rehash of the original or a retelling of the graphic novel. He confirms that it's going to be, new characters, but he says there will be some unknown characters. They're gonna revisit the past century of costumed adventuring through a surprising yet familiar set of eyes. Which is an interesting thing to say. But I think the big takeaways are not a reboot, but it's spinning out of the original series, so related potentially. I think a lot of people are saying he confirms the modern day, and I've gone, modern day setting. I've gone back and forth on this. I'm not necessarily sure, but when he does say that it's going to be rooted in the politics of, the world, the frequency of Trump and May and Putin, I think that kind of, it has to be, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you guys take away from this? I mean, what have you guys read the letter? What was your reaction? I came away impressed and also, honestly more interested in the series. It made you cry? You wept tears?
Yeah. Tears of joy or tears of sadness and pain?
Tears of happy.
Okay.
It sounds, I think that there's
See, this sounds like exactly what we need. This is so interesting that he's doing the whole sequel thing, because if you guys remember, Watchmen does end on a kind of a cliffhanger where you don't know how Rorschach's journal is going to change the world, because remember, it gets to that one random dude at the newspaper.
Yep.
Yeah.
So all those secrets getting out could radically change history or whatever happens after that. It's really interesting.
It could completely undermine, exactly what he was going for, or what Ozymandias was working for. So it ends kind of on that note, and I'm sure it's one of those things where I don't expect it to pick up with the characters and pick up with Doc Manhattan and, addressing, it's like, 3 days later it all fell apart and Ozymandias was a fucking idiot and I blew up Rorschach for no reason.
That'd be hilarious if that was just how it started.
I would laugh, but I
it's
don't
like, I
think he's
fucked
gonna do
up.
that. I don't know. I think it's really interesting that him saying it's going to be new faces with some old faces mixed in. That kind of does make me think that the cop thing might be true. Cops in Oklahoma or wherever. I don't know. I'm very interested to see exactly how this story is going to play out. And this letter ultimately left me with way more questions than answers.
Dude, in true Lindelof fashion.
God, he did make a joke. He made a joke at his own expense about Prometheus in here too. Trying to find it. Just if there are any of our Alien fans listening, why would they be? But
like Nick.
and just where was it?
Well, I guess kind of while you look for that, I am very interested in the series, especially with Lindelof helming it. I think there's going to be kind of a theme for the episode. The whole aspect of it being changed or remixed, I guess, in this context, is going to have a lot of pushback, and I think it's going to be just a little bit of an uphill battle, because I know Alan Moore is very particular about his precious sacred texts, so he doesn't like them to be adapted. And I know the last time they did Watchmen, some people really enjoyed it, some people did not. Personally, I enjoyed it, and I'm intrigued to see the direction. But I think with him mentioning the whole aspect of the political climate, I think it's good because it stays kind of in tone with the original and kind of gives a sort of not exactly reactionary commentary, but it alludes to it, because it does play a role in how the characters interact with the plot and everything. I just think with it being potentially set in modern times and him referencing and Trump and Putin,
Theresa May,
and whatnot.
Putin.
Yeah, and Theresa May. I think when he mentioned that part, I think that's going to be where some of the pushback comes from. and then the fact that it might be kind of a follow-up spin-off series too at the same time, like, may not garner the best reaction. So I think it's going to be a situation where he really has his work cut out for him to kind of put his own spin on Watchmen, kind of. But I'm interested. Like,
they're going to fight Trump. He's going to be the villain.
Ozzy Man.
He's the new Ozzy.
Dr. Manhattan blows him up.
Superhero in an orange suit named Mr. President.
Maximus President.
No. Maximus President. But no, I got Emperor Trump. But no,
Dragon energy of doom.
So the Prometheus thing was really funny, and he addresses a really interesting and important point here, I think, that I want to throw out there, just because I think fans a lot of times, fans of everything, fans of Watchmen, the DCEU, the MCU, they kind of get it in their head that if you love something, that means you can't be critical of it, or you can't want it to be better. And I think any fan of a bad sports team knows that's not true. And he makes the same analogy here. And he says that he kind of changed his thinking on that, because he once said, I'm going to quote here, I once said that if one were a true fan of something, they weren't allowed to hate it. A prominent writer took me to task for such heresy, arguing that just because one wasn't the creator of a show, this did not permit them to pick and choose who was and wasn't a fan of it. That writer went on to win a Pulitzer for television criticism. I went on to get snubbed by the Razzies for Prometheus. So I do think that there's a good point to be made there. Is he comes on the back. He comes on the back. Phrasing, boom. He says this on the heels of saying something about Alan Moore that I think is a really interesting point, because I think a lot of people shut down any and all talk about a Watchmen series by saying, well, if Alan Moore doesn't want it, it's not going to happen, or it shouldn't happen. And I think the two things are the two things to remember is he says they did get Dave Gibbons, but then he submits that Mr. Moore kind of got to where he could be writing Watchmen. He got to where he was, being able to write Watchmen, writing Batman, Superman, Captain Britain, Swamp Thing, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, all of these other characters that were created by other people, and so it's. There is an interesting point to be made there. Where do you guys fall on that debate? I mean, if Alan Moore doesn't want something to be made, is that enough to stop it?
I think it all comes down to the direction that you want to take the product. Because I haven't read Watchmen, but I've read V for Vendetta, and Alan Moore is a phenomenal writer, especially when it comes to bringing across story alongside concepts. And I can see from a creator perspective why you wouldn't want anyone to tarnish it. He's a little bit more, I don't want to exactly say extreme, but he's a little bit more specific about his beliefs about adapting things, because I know a similar thing happened with Fahrenheit 451, which just had a movie and it did not get good reception, I'm hearing. So it's one of those situations where it's like, if it was me, I'd just be concerned more with the direction that they intend to take it. If it's going to be direct or not, and will it be respectful rather than. But I mean, for Alan Moore's case, he can say what he wants, but I don't think it's going to really stop people. If anything, it may push them to want to do it more, and I kind of feel bad for the guy in that regard, because I think he may see it as a form of disrespect to his art.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think this is honestly as much for Alan Moore, even though I'm not sure Alan Moore knows what a computer is.
He's playing Pokemon Go, though.
That's true. He might have an Instagram, and I want to find that account someday. But
the secret Alan Moore wizard.
The secret Alan Moore wizardry, magic, occultness
The
account.
BBC
Him and Grant Morrison.
Yeah, the BBC when they interviewed him, the little bar underneath said. What was it, wizard, writer, Rasputin imposter or something?
Yeah, it did. It's author.
Oh man, that's him and Grant Morrison, man. But it's really interesting, because I think that this is as much to him and the Alan Moore purists as it is to the rest of the fans. And I think that's the big thing, is he's just trying to express that he is a fan of the property. This isn't some money man who doesn't know who Alan Moore is, as he gives one example of a TV producer who tried to get him to do Watchmen and had no idea who Alan Moore was. This is coming from a place of love for him and a place of real reverence. and it's not going to retread it. So that's one of the reasons why I came off really positive about it.